All right, everybody, welcome to Shelf Space. We're on episode 19. As always, we have Gina live from Toronto, or I think you just got back from celebrating the Raptors victory last night.
That's right. First
Yeah,
time in
she's
the finals.
she's been out all night partying. We have live from Montreal, Charles, who's just got back from his latest movie shoot.
Hey everybody.
And and the sunglasses. And top right, we have our special guest for today, veteran sculptor in the hobby collecting industry, Victor Hugo Sousa.
Hey guys, great to be
Welcome.
here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining the show. So, for those watching, we're just going to run through, as we always do, Victor's background, how he got into the industry. He's probably best known for his work on Iron Studios, done some work with XM Studios, and then we got some random questions at the end for you there, Victor. So, let's get into it and just start off with your background. Gina, let's take it away.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Victor, for joining us.
Thank you.
Um, thank you so much for coming on the show. I guess we'll start off where we normally start off with artists that we've had on the show. Can you give us a little sort of background in your education or training in art?
Sure. Well, actually, I don't have like any education. I kind of self-taught in a lot of things, and I did a lot of workshops and studied with a lot of artists, but I haven't gone to any art school. I have studied with Glauco Longhi, Rafael Grassetti, Alexandre Trufanov, Pedro Toledo, Caton Calloway. Uh, I think Justin Holt. I have studied with them, but I've in Brazil, back in Brazil, when I lived there, we didn't have many schools. Right now, we have great schools like Méliès, ICS, Axis, and these schools where people can learn computer graphic back like 15 years ago when I started when I started work and studying with that. We didn't have a lot of schools. So I started as a web designer, but that wasn't what I liked to do. I always liked movies, toys, and all this kind of stuff, and games, and but I had no idea how to get into that. So I started searching for a studio and understand what I would like to do. And then I found a studio back in Rio de Janeiro when I lived there because I was born there. And there was like one studio that called my attention because of the artwork and everything that they were doing, and I was like, oh my god, that's what I wanted to do, like TV ads and all this kind of stuff. And I sent them emails and I kept sending them stuff and telling them that I'd love to do that and learn that things. And they liked my work as a designer, and they called me to work on their website and start learning computer graphics. There were a lot of things that happened during this and after this. I've made some great friendships there, where I met Renato Ferro, I met Rodolfo de Souza, and one of the guys that we call Papito, and Marcelo Souza, which is also a great name in Brazil. And he's living in Toronto, working at Tanjiro Studios right now. And I work with the Tanjiro Studios a lot. They are great friends of mine. And then they came, Marcelo and Renato came to São Paulo, went to São Paulo in this case because I'm not there anymore. But and then they started working in a place called GP Studios, and they called me to do the same thing, help with the computers, the design, and start working and learning a lot of computer graphics. And that was when I really started to studying it and learning it from the work itself, because I had to do stuff I didn't know how to do it, so I had to ask them or search what we could online. But we didn't have a lot of great information online, but we have some information that were great.
Was this
And
was this in the 90s or was this in
it was
2000?
15 years ago.
Wow, okay.
Like, yeah, 15 years ago. We are into, so 2004, I think
Okay.
2005, around that.
Well, Victor, it's very interesting what you're saying. Like, the career trajectory that you're describing, being self taught, starting in web design, dabbling in computer graphics, not really having structured courses in this at the time. It seems to be a very common career trajectory with a lot of the people that we've had on the show. And as a segue to this, how did you get discovered? Like, what were the works where Iron Studios, XM Studios, all these people are just like noticing your work? What are they seeing? How did you get their attention?
Well, it was a funny thing because I never thought about working with status and toys and all this stuff. I always worked with cinematics, TV, advertisement, and games and all this kind of stuff. And then when I was working with in a print company where my friend Igor Kato called me and to work with him, there was another friend working at Iron Studios, and as I used to make some clay renders to show the models, because I worked as a 3D generalist for 12 years, I think 10 years, something like that. And I was VFX supervisor, I was 3D director, and then I started to study with Glauco to become a character specialized. And I while I was studying with Glauco and doing all these workshops that I said about Rafael Grassetti and Pedro Toledo and all these guys, uh, I started to put up a portfolio for cinematic and games and all this kind of media. And when I put it online, people started working, looking at it and liking my
On
portfolio a lot.
ArtStation, is that where you posted it?
No, our station were not live on that time. We had CG Hub, which was a great source of
Exposure.
freelance and exposure. Yeah, exactly. Uh, and ZBrush Central was always, because ZBrush has always been a great place to show your work and get highlighted, and all the artists are around there, and the companies keep looking at it. Also, there was a site, and there it's a big website called 3D Total, and it's a great website. They supported me a lot. They loved my work, and they kept me. They put me on magazines, on covers, my work
Wow, that's
on their web.
amazing.
Yeah,
What's
it
the
was
name of that
great.
magazine? Sorry.
3D World, I think. Yeah, I think it's 3D World.
One thing I forgot to mention off the top of the show is that Victor is now living in Vancouver, British Columbia. So this is almost coast to coast across Canada. We're close. So it's all Canadian content today. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So you mentioned you were born in Brazil, coming to Canada.
It was a work
Well,
related
yeah.
decision coming up to Canada?
Mm, yes and no. The thing is, things here are easier for my field, especially because of the companies that we have here and all this context that we can make and networking. But it was more like a family and a future decision, because I have kids, and schools in Brazil are not that good, and there is this security stuff and all these kind of things that are happening in Brazil. And right now, so we decided, we are lucky enough to get the permanent resident visa. So
Well, welcome to Canada.
Well,
Congratulations.
I think the
much.
big reason was you wanted to get closer to me, right?
Yeah,
BC,
yeah,
right
yeah.
next to Alberta. So um,
Well, it
I
was
think
the package, the whole package.
all right. So it's interesting, like Charles mentioned, your career path. I mean, of all the sculptors that we've had on the show, I don't think any one of them has said I started off wanting to do statues. They've all come to it through gaming, through TV or movies or whatever, and were discovered and asked to do statues, and kind of the rest is history. So I think, speaking of statues, we're going to move on to some of your works with Iron Studios, a Brazilian company.
Mhm.
Um,
Actually, hold on. Can I just ask him a quick question
sure.
with regards to, you were talking about ZBrush before.
ZBrush, ZBrush,
Right.
yeah.
Well, sorry. In
Zed is
Canada,
it's the Canadian way.
it's Canadian way.
Yeah,
And
you're gonna
when
have to
you
start
were,
calling it Zed Brush, Victor. You're in Canada now.
and was there something in your in the past couple of years where you were asked to test out new technology in this area?
Yeah, actually, this last year, ZBrush was the Pixologic team and Jaime Lebel, which is the creator and one of the creators and owners of Pixologic, were kind enough to invite me to be a beta tester for ZBrush and study and try some new tools that they were releasing and in the 2019 version. And actually, it was a great experience. And I made an artwork with the new render technology from ZBrush 2019, calls and render, I think. uh, and it was amazing because this artwork went to the installation screen of ZBrush, so there something that I never thought it would happen in my
Wow.
Oh,
career.
that's awesome. So when people install the program,
Yeah,
they're seeing your
well,
render 3D image there in
yeah,
your
there
work.
are there are there are a lot of artists' artworks there when they're selling. One of them is mine, So
That's
That's pretty
amazing.
cool. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Um, okay, so we're gonna move on to Iron Studios. Before we do that, I just want to say hi to Divine, who logged in, is watching the show with us here today.
Welcome, Divine.
Iron Studios, as I mentioned, Brazilian company. Was this your first foray into the statue industry? Was with Iron Studios?
Yeah, exactly. A friend of mine was working there. Gerson Hotter is his name, and he called me to talk to the owner. And because of my portfolio had some clay renders, and and he liked that because it looked like statues. And we were talking about that, and he called me and he said, "Hey, wanted to work here. Can you do this kind of stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. It's sculpting, it's modeling." And I started working there and learned a lot about everything, from the process itself, like different scales, what kind of thing you have to work in different scales, bigger textures, stronger textures, in a smaller scale. I learned about molding and what there are three steps, because not everything that works in printing will work in the molding and casting. So I learned to check this stuff and all this kind of problems. And yeah, it was my first experience with shadows. And then I worked there called Cementation, and one of the friends knew the owner of XM, and he said that they were looking for people. And when he sent my portfolio to him, he liked it and then talked to me, and we started working together like 3 years ago, almost, I think.
Wow.
Excellent. So go ahead, Gina.
I was going to ask you that. So when you got contacted by Iron Studios, or sort of the first company, were you aware of the statue collecting community and the
No,
statue collectibles, or it was sort of brand new to you?
no, it was brand new because I'm a hot toy collector,
Yeah.
so I always wondered how the things were done. But uh, back there, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there wasn't that much of this collecting and status boom we have now, because in the last 2, 3 years, everything grew up so fast, and there were a lot of new companies and everything. But back then, we had few companies, and I didn't even know that there was something like working with that. Although we have sideshows for 20 years, we didn't know that was possible.
Hmm.
So you weren't familiar with companies like Bowen Designs? That didn't ring a bell?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
didn't know. I didn't know
yeah,
about Boeing.
because when you're saying the last 5 years it was a boom, there have been statue collectors like they go back 20 years. Like I've been, for example, buying statues for 20 years more even.
Hmm.
So, and what I have found is just like a generation shift, like a generation leaves and then a new generation joins, right? But it's been around for quite some time. But that leads to like the next question. Now that you're working in this world, did you grow up like loving comics?
Oh
Was that
yeah,
a
yeah. I was like a nerd king, like okay, you guys. Until the 2000, I read everything.
Nerd King and Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know back in the 2000, not the new stories, but because I don't have any more time to read, but I knew everything about comics and superheroes and video games and all this kind of stuff. I always loved comic books and movies. And
Now you kind of touched on one of my questions here earlier. With Iron Studios, you're working on a bunch of different scales, ranges. You got the 1/10 scale, and I showed the Shazam earlier, and we got some Ghostbusters here,
hmm
and you got 1/6 scale, 1/3 scale.
hmm
Quarter
How does
scale?
yeah, how does the scale, the final scale of the statue affect your process, or does it?
yeah, well, it affects a lot, especially because when you are working with larger scales, you are closer to the real scale. The one by one scale, the real scale. I don't know how
Yeah,
to call it.
Life
life size. Yeah.
size.
Yep.
Life size, yeah, the life size scale, and so the textures, as you're getting closer to the life size scale, uh, the textures and all the work can get closer to real and the life size details as well. you know. And when you work with smaller scales, you have to make everything more noticeable because uh, it will have the mold and the casting process and everything. It loses a lot of detail. So textures, for example, you can't make the same size of life size textures. You have to make them stronger and bigger. So one of the things that help us in the process that I learned there is there, for example, if you have a 10 centimeters statue or 20 centimeters statue, you put the measure on in the front of the monitor, and then you scale in the program uh, the statue to fit the measurement in the real measurement, like 20 meters, like something like that. You put that scale in your monitor, and what shows there, it will probably appear after printed and mold and cast. So if you make life-size textures, details, and everything, and you scale it down to show in the monitor as the real life measure, you see that no details will appear. They will always all
They kind of
disappear.
disappear.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, the image on your monitor, if it's 20 centimeters, that's how whatever you see on that image then is what you'll
It
probably
will
see.
be closer to, yeah, it will be
Gotcha.
closer to it helps a lot. It's not like a formula. It's not, it won't be the 100% what you're seeing in your monitor,
Okay.
but it helps a lot. Like,
So, for this Hawkman, for example, tons of texturing on the feathers. This is the
mhm,
1/10 scale Hawkman.
yeah.
So you would sort of zoom out or whatever of this picture on your monitor until it's
um,
roughly
the
20
real size.
centimeters, and
Yeah.
then whatever you see is what you get, kind of.
Yeah, kind of that. you know. And one of the things is that, especially for print, because print is almost exactly the same as 3D, but there is the molding casting process that tend to lose some details, so that's why we make it a lot stronger. So it will appear in the final product as well, you know.
So when I look at that Hawkman statue, I assume that the feathers, the wings, would be the most challenging thing to create.
Yeah.
Am I correct? Was that the most
Oh yeah,
challenging? Yeah.
definitely. Especially because this we had a tight deadline because this one was going to be a Comic Con experience. CCXP, I think it's not the name. CCXP exclusive. So my friend Igor Kato did those wings, and I helped him with the model. I did all the model details and everything, the anatomy, and the other one, the bigger one, 1/3 scale,
Yeah.
I did the feathers and everything, and
Oh,
it's like,
really?
yeah,
Yeah, we'll show that one in a bit
Wow.
because
it's
that's
like
a pretty special piece.
another statue for the feathers and wings and everything. It's just that, like, there are three characters, you know, in this statue. There are the closed feather, the closed wing,
Yeah.
the open wings, and the Hawkman. And if you count the base, that is complex as well. You will get like four characters in one statue because
Oh,
they
wow.
are really complex and they need the same amount of work and love when you're sculpting the character.
So that process of like you mentioned, you lose details in the mold and cast. Is that just a trial and error type of process until you kind of like know what how strong to make the details?
Well, in the beginning, especially if you're working alone, yeah, it will be. But these companies, all these companies, they have the kind of experience needed for you to apply the right amount of details and scale and everything you need for the final product. For it, the Iron Studios knew that, XM Studios know exactly what to ask, and Sideshow and all these companies they have a large amount of experience with that. You know, especially because they are close to the factory, and they they see how things are done there, so they know exactly how
So
things will work.
someone's done that guesswork then for you already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
One last question about the Hawkman, because I'm just sort of fascinated with the wings. Did you use for your sort of interpretation? Did you use the comic book for reference for the wings, or did you actually use real bird photos to
Both.
get that?
Yeah, we use both because there is a construction for the wings, and we didn't have time to make for the small one. We didn't have a lot of time to make it exactly. It was the way we wanted. It was based on the concept of Ivan Reis, that is a DC artist,
Yep.
and he's
Yes, he
awesome.
is.
And but the bigger one we tried to make, and we got this image from the internet that shows exactly how a bird wing is made of, like, five types, six types of different feathers, and where each one is placed. And we have to have some artistic interpretation of that because it's kind of hard to follow exactly what's there.
Well, to be fair, it's not like statue collectors are experts in feathers, sort of, you know. But I have to say that that Hawkman is very impressive. When you see the wingspan, your eye just completely glued to it. You did an awesome job on that wingspan, and I think it's going to be memorable.
So here's the 1/3 scale
Yeah.
Hawkman that's just
Yeah.
released or is up for pre-order now, I believe. And you mentioned the open wings versus and the closed wings. I mean, this thing looks fantastic. I got to say, when when Iron Studios came to you and said, "Okay, we're gonna do," because you worked on a previous statue on their 1/3 scale, and we'll talk about that one later. But they said our next one's gonna be Hawkman. Were you a
hmm
little surprised by that?
Well, we used to talk a lot about which characters we would like to make and which characters were good, for put in line an order that people would like. And if the owner and everybody always wanted to make an arc on Hawkman, a big Hawkman, and Ivan Hayes also loved the character, and so it was great because when they talked to me, they said that I could also help with the concept of the character. So I talked a lot with Van Reyes about his. It was like a great communication and a lot of back and forth of his design and accessories and everything that would be good for him. So this project was amazing, and although we had a little time also to make that one, and this was my last project at Iron Studios.
Well,
Well,
it's
you
a
had
good.
a great, sorry, you had a great career with Iron Studios. You've done so much with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so I'm just showing the Magneto versus Sentinel. This is I would say one of the classic Iron Studios pieces that a lot of people probably are going to recognize. Came out a few years ago. Very cool concept with the beam uh, being shot through the eye of the Sentinel.
yeah.
Um, is
This
that
was my first statue there.
this was your first one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
It's a
Good
very
thing you showed it.
ambitious design, elevated in the air. It's a violent image. It's when we first saw that there was a wow, that looks awesome kind of component to seeing that.
Yeah, it was at the time it came out. There wasn't, these dioramas had kind of gone away, and then Iron Studios comes in and starts reviving that category. Really,
Hmm.
another one you worked on was Superman versus Doomsday.
Yeah. It's
Um,
also based on Ivan Ray's trace. He designed it and helped with some elements and helped with composing the scene with work for a statue. Or I worked a lot with fundraise during the years at Iron Studios, so it was a great project because when we start talking about great Superman moment, there is no other great moment as his death. So his death was memorable, and
Pretty
we talked.
iconic, yeah.
Yeah, we like it's Doomsday and Superman will make it, and how can we make it work?
So
So Ivan Ray did a lot of concepts, and we talked to him, and I did a lot of 3D sketches to make the composition and ask him what works and what he'd like to see. And this was the final composition, and he loved
yeah.
it. And
So one thing that stands out for me is the base. It's got all kinds of detail on it. I don't know if you were involved with sculpting the base
yeah, I
on this one.
sculpted everything.
So I know, or I don't know. I guess reading quotes from like comic book artists will say backgrounds are a chore for them. Is it,
Hmm.
is the base of a statue kind of, is it fun for you to do, or is it kind of a chore to do the base? Are you more focused on the characters?
No, everything is fun, and everything has its challenge. This base was a true challenge. Uh, so the same thing that happened to Hawkman happened to this uh, project because there are three characters: the Superman, Doomsday, and the base. And the base might be the most complex character in this diorama. So yeah, I
By
love doing
choice.
bases.
Yeah. Do you find it a challenge working on dioramas? I ask because it's not just one character, it's two, and they're symbiotic. They rely on one another.
Yeah,
So it seems like a much more challenging undertaking from a fan perspective.
yeah, and not only from fan perspective, but also from the production perspective. For example, there was this hand holding uh, Doomsday's head and neck, and we're like, okay, will it work? How it gonna be? And everything is a lot harder to make when you're working with two characters, three characters that especially get in contact with each other. But challenges challenges like this are always funny and great, you know. So
So when I see this diorama, and just going through your process of working on it, I this is what I imagine. So let me just sort of let us know if this is correct. I'm assuming that you would have a folder for reference art for Doomsday, then you have a separate folder for reference art for Superman, and then you might have a third folder for your reference art for the base, and you're sort of, and then you've got your ZBrush program open, and you're kind of multitasking between all those different softwares as you're working on that. Am I correct? Is that how? Is that your
yeah,
process?
and there is a fourth folder for anatomy
Okay.
reference
Ah.
because we search a lot of, especially working with superhero characters, we have a lot of reference from anatomy and bodybuilders and everything. So we keep staring at naked men a lot of time of work, you know. So
Right.
yeah, we do that. Um,
So what you're saying
and
is you want more female characters in the Iron Studios portfolio,
yeah,
right?
Well, you bring up an interesting point because Victor, we haven't, at least not in my short-term memory, I haven't really noticed you working on female sculpts.
I am working on them right now for a project for a company, and they I think the whole line will have my name. It's probably this way that's going to be. I'm pretty
Wow.
excited about this.
Oh, can you tell
They
us more, or is it still
no,
kind of
it's still
preliminary?
yeah.
Secret project, but we'll definitely mention it when it comes out. One statue I want to get to before we move on to XM is the 1/3 scale Superman.
Mhm.
Now, in your ArtStation page, I believe you mentioned that Superman's one of your favorite characters,
Yeah.
and this one is, this kind of a big deal. This statue. So, what was it like to get to work on your favorite character and this size of and scale of statue?
Well, Superman has always been my favorite character, and he's awesome not only by his powers, but if you look at the stories, and his best stories are the ones that he doesn't fight, besides the death of Superman. But there's a lot in him that's way beyond his powers. You know, the what he believes and everything, what he means, like hope and all. He's what you always wanted to be. So when they talked about working on this project, it was really nice. We had a talk about he's in the same universe of the Batman 1/3, even wanted to make characters in the same universe. So he designed his uniform, and we kind of use the same textures. If you look at compare both, there are like three textures in Superman that are the same that Batman uses on his uniform. So, and we wanted to make him like the angry head is looking at Batman when he is looking up with the kryptonite ring, you know. So if you put on one in front of the other, they kind of match together, and that was amazing because I really wanted to make something big with him, and I studied anatomy a lot with this character, with this pose, and Ivan Hayes always kept me sending me the designs and what he liked for the uniform. Like, hey, here I think it's great to not have textures. There is some part of his uniform that doesn't have any textures at all, and
So that's the part kind of under the armpit there.
yeah,
It is
and
kind of nice to break up the look a little bit, in my opinion.
mhm.
If it's the whole thing's all the same texture, it can it kind of looks a little funny. It doesn't look very realistic to me, but the way you've broken it up looks very nice.
Yeah,
Um,
and there is this belt because it's Ivan Ray's signature belt. If you look at his drawing, the
mhm.
belts are always making a V shape, something like that,
Okay.
and it's like his signature. and also there was the base. He wanted Fortress of Solitude, kind of, but more like ice and not crystals. And it was,
Yeah, so I got a small picture of the base there, but some close-ups with the textures on the cape and stuff look very realistic. This statue's just kind of released now, and it looks like it's turned out very well. So, um,
yeah.
good work on that one.
Thank
Um,
you.
Gina, Charles, anything left about Iron Studios before we move on to set?
I think with Iron Studios, you were doing things outside the superheroes, right? You were doing Ghostbusters.
Yeah, we had a lot of license there. We did Ghostbusters. Actually, did a lot of things, movies, Marvel superheroes movies. Uh, I can't. Star Wars. Star Wars. I did a lot. Some Star Wars there.
Yeah,
And
they've got quite a variety of
yeah,
stuff. So
So I mean, like that's a great experience for an artist. A lot of the artists seem to get pigeonholed, meaning like they're working at DC and that's all they do, and then they work for Marvel and that's all they do. And you've had a chance to really be versatile with your craft, working
yeah.
on different licenses, even movie projects. Where not many people get a chance to go there. Did you find that you have a particular preference? Marvel, DC, film? Is there something that anytime you get a chance to get, you'll jump for it?
Well, I like all of them. There is no preference, especially working on it because it's always good. And as I used to know about a lot about these characters, their personality are different. So I know exactly how a character behaves. That so they are
You
all
know them.
different.
Yeah.
They can't I can't sculpt a Superman like and then sculpt like Sentinel Sentry. I can't sculpt Sentry the same way because he's a different character. He has a different personality. So Magneto.
You bring
Well,
up a very good point. I'm just sorry I'm interjecting because that's just some things that we see that doesn't work. Sometimes we see sculpts, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but sometimes you see sculpts where it looks like a cosplayer, right? It looks like someone who just put on the costume and now they're dressed like X character, but it doesn't ring true because the sculpt isn't just about someone in a costume. It's got to be that person. And that's
yeah,
why it's great to hear. Go ahead,
sorry,
Chris.
yeah, you have to capture the attitude in a
The
freeze frame,
essence.
right?
yeah.
So that's very cool. Gina, anything about Iron Studios?
No, I think we're ready to
Okay.
move on. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to another company you've done a lot of work for, which is XM Studios.
hmm
And I think we'll start off with a statue here that is getting reworked now, but it has been reworked a few times. Can you tell us a little bit about? We were chatting before the show a little bit about this one. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the process behind
Oh,
this
this
Samurai Joker?
was my first statue at XM, and it was a great challenge. We talked and did a lot of stuff, the concepts, and this was the final version of one of the concepts there. And I remember that I did another concept that was a dead fat guy in the floor and one dead, no,
Yeah,
Bane.
yeah.
I well, I didn't grab any photos of that, but
I
yeah, the
I I
original
I
concept.
I don't. They released some pictures of that. I don't know when or where. I can't find them either.
Yeah,
But it was a very big and complex project, and in the end, all the process took like 5 months to
Whoa.
work on it, and it was very cool. It's very challenging because there were a lot of switch out options. I think that I did 4 options for heads, and yeah, there was this smiling up and closed eye faces, two masks, and looking
yeah.
for
There's some different
looking.
hairdos and things, right? Yeah, there's a few
Yeah,
different ones.
and
I remember they were having complications with the tattoo component also.
yeah, I didn't get much information about that, but I know it was pretty hard. Uh, to apply the textures and the tattoos in the way that work, but they were looking awesome, but not perfect the way XM is used to make stuff, you know. So they also, I think they also uh, are reworking on that statue, especially because uh, gets more into the line and the other constant other statues, you know. When they put it together, it was like, hey, concept doesn't match the other statues that much. So I think they decided to rework that, and I hope you
Mm.
So
guys like the new one.
and you're involved on the rework, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Is this the first time that you worked on a Japanese inspired statue?
Yes, it was. And the samurai armor was really challenging, you know, because uh, there are technical aspects of it that we have to be aware of,
Yeah.
especially because it's too thin in some areas to break and all this kind of
Who
stuff.
who are you? Who is your art director at XM with this design?
Martin Augusta,
Oh
he's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, he's
Hey
awesome.
Martin's
Martin, if you're watching, we're saying
yeah,
hello.
Martin's a
Yeah,
friend of the show.
yeah,
Um,
he's
so
awesome.
you mentioned that the armor and like the historical accuracy of that line is very important to the whole thing, like to make it
Hmm.
all authentic. So did when XM came to you, did they say, okay, here's how we want it to the armor to look, or did you do end up doing a lot of research of your own
Oh,
into that?
they always give me a lot of freedom to work in the projects, but we talk a lot about it. I don't like not only with them, but I don't like to work a lot in something using my vision and then show it to the art director and the company because I know there are a lot of opinions and they not only the companies but there's licenses like Marvel and DC and they are used to what they like or not. So I always try to get with XM and other clients to a place like, hey, here's what I like to do. What do you think about this reference? And then the sketches. Hey, do you like these sketches? Do you like this kind of details? And I like to always talk a lot with the company about all the process not going too far before
No, you're
we.
concerned about the approval process. If you go too
Yeah,
far,
yeah.
you know.
We lose time
Yeah.
and
Mm.
money and work and a lot of stuff. You know.
All right. So another project that you're working on. Well, first before I show this one, I just want to show the picture from STGCC. Charles and I had a chance to see the prototype in
Yeah.
Singapore, so it was a pretty cool looking statue. So hopefully, the rework
That was day
comes out
one.
well.
Nobody's there, just so you know.
Yeah. So Aquaman is another one that you've worked on with XM Studios. So
Yeah.
this is an interesting piece. So tell us about this one. Were you involved in the design process of this one?
Yeah. They gave me total freedom to design the seahorse and its armor. And it was funny because it was done way before the movie. But when the movie was released, Aquaman in the movie was like in a seahorse, like sea dragon, I know. And it was funny because we didn't follow the movie and we didn't know about that. Uh,
But it's not
so
that surprising to see. I mean,
yeah,
we
yeah,
saw it in the cartoons, and that aspect. It is part of the Aquaman legend.
yeah,
But still cool to see.
yeah, yeah. So one of the things that was awesome doing this design is like there is an Easter egg in this sculpture. When you look the seahorse from above, all the ceiling and the seahorse design looks like a sea monster. You know, there is the eyes, like three eyes in each side, the mustache, and all this kind of thing that I tried to keep more fluid and organic. You know, like was
Yeah.
It's really
everything has the thank you. Everything has this wave design, like under the sea. You know, this flow design. So
Yeah, one thing I
they
was gonna say is the base really stands out to me here, and the school of fish. swirling around that column there.
Yeah,
It
it was.
really does give you that underwater feel.
Yeah, the concept had a few fishes, and the Martin had these great ideas to make a lot of fishes together, and we loved it.
It's
Yeah, that's
beautiful. I mean, I have to say, I mean, on social media and the whole statue collecting community, people have different opinions, and which makes sense. This is one of those statues that I don't think I mean, everyone is universally, from what I've seen on social media, loves this statue, and I think that's just sort of a credit to you. You don't see that very often in the statue community. We all have our different opinions. This statue just whether someone's a Aquaman fan or not, it just captured everyone's attention in a positive way. It's
Thank you
really,
so much.
really, really
It's
well done.
really rewarding to know that, uh, but you know, it's also a great teamwork. I'm always working so great with XM. We talk a lot, and it's not one man's decision. We talk a lot about everything that would be cool to have in a statue, and so if people like it, it's because it's a teamwork. I think it the team decided and get to the better way or better look to that, and we talked a lot about everything, the components of the base. Martin also does a lot of great feedback, like paint overs and, hey, I think maybe the composition would be better like this. What do you think about it? And I think, yeah, it's good, it's great, I love it. I make it in 3D and send to you to check if you like it too. So the thing about all the companies that I work with and work for and try to do, it's always to enjoy the process and make it like it seems like everybody heart is on it. So it's very rewarding to listen and know that because it was a great project with a lot of team effort.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to see when you're looking at the Aquaman statue and also the others in that same 1/6 scale line. There's a lot to see. And I think that, fans can appreciate and they also know when more work was put into it. And it was a great job on the Aquaman.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's shaping up to be a really great line. So I want to move on to a statue that I'm like super excited about, Doctor
Yeah, me too.
Octopus. I mean, this
Yeah.
this is a character that just has been sorely overlooked forever, and now we got a Doctor Octopus coming. I'm just gonna throw up some images of him.
I think it's
Um,
because he's difficult to produce, difficult to sculpt. Doc Ock isn't like, Iron Man. It's there's a lot to consider when you're doing a character like this.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Victor, I was gonna ask you, Doctor Octopus, he doesn't have the typical superhero build. Let's say,
It's very true.
does that was that difficult to do? I mean, you're used to doing the Olympic athlete
Well,
superhero build.
uh, it was great. It was the greatest project that I've done with XM because this was really fun, and it was not that hard because I had reference from myself, so I could look into the
Just
mirror
yeah, just
and look down to my belly and think, hey, I look like this. Okay, it's cool. So I'm getting there. So it was not that hard about that, but it was awesome because it was different. It didn't have the the superhero physical uh, design. So it was so fun to work on this one. His body was one of the things that called my attention when working on him because yeah, we really want to make him look like a normal guy. It was possible to see this guy on the streets. So it
yeah,
was
Doctor Octopus physique is something we can all relate to. I think
yeah,
so.
no, not you.
um, it looks like a fun statue. I mean, you could when you mentioned it was fun to work on. I mean that's showing through on the statue. You can see it. It
Yeah, it was really great. they gave me a lot of freedom to work on the tentacles, and we were changing stuff during the process, and the wall when we wanted to look really cool and funny, and those coins falling apart. I mean, like, hey, this guy is robbing a bank and he's coming without with coins, but it's a kind of an old concept in like, and it was really really fun to work on it.
I mean,
There was
I
some.
get that. Sorry, I was just gonna say I get that every time I see the statue, I get this nostalgic, feel of Doctor Octopus. Just like even from like the 1960s cartoon, like it's just, it's just yeah, it's really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it exactly was what we are looking for, because some things when you kind of lose the timing and all this opportunity to make something fun. If we care too much about, hey, we won't be just coming out the bank with these coins, these gold coins and everything, but it's funny. It's a good detail.
Mhm.
I remember there was some debate. Do you want reflection, on his glasses? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. Actually, I don't know how it's gonna be the final one.
I think they decided against it.
Yeah, no
Yeah, yeah.
reflection.
There were some talks. Uh, well, I did with the lens and the face behind the lens because they didn't know if they wanted transparent glass, and they are always trying to improve this kind of stuff. So we have to make it like, hey, if you decide to make transparent glasses, the face is there, okay? So yeah, okay. Like I think the Weapon X Wolverine, they were trying that liquid,
Right.
and they are always trying great stuff and great stuff,
Looked
new.
good on the Weapon X.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, they didn't know how to what they wanted with this piece, so they tried the reflex. I don't know if they had problems or people don't
Yeah,
didn't
so the
like it.
final look is what you see here on screen. It's kind of the
Yeah,
blue glass, so you don't see his eyes behind it. But I like the final look that they went with.
Me
yeah,
too.
It's very nice. Um, so one last statue from XM that we want to get to, and this is a pretty big one that was a pretty big hit with collectors earlier this year. Actually, when it
Mark.
debuted last year,
yeah,
Batman Sanity.
yeah.
This is a statue that's really got a lot of people talking. It's a huge undertaking from XM Studios. So, Charles, I think you wanted to had some questions for this one.
Well, you worked on two characters on this, the Joker and Two Face. That's correct. What's it like working on an ambitious design like this, where there are different sculptors working on the different characters, and you want to make sure everything is balanced? That's everyone's kind of in equilibrium with the kind of expressions that the piece is trying to make. What was it like working with so many different hands?
Well, uh, there is where Martin Augusta does his awesome magic and his work because as an art director, because
Another plug.
yeah, he did an awesome work on that. Everything has to be synchronized, and
Right.
we can uh, uh, jump to the next step before everyone has done their part. And Martin had the difficult work to put it all together, and he was always saying like, "Hey, this is the file that we're going to use as base for the scale and positions. This is where you put it and send me like this." Okay, so he was always looking at stuff and putting together what we needed because he also sculpted Batman. I think I don't know if he did another one, but he sculpted Batman, and there was some contact between the Joker and the Batman, and he sent me the shoulders, and he put the his Joker's hand and he said, "Hey, it's better to place it here," and all this kind of stuff. He did his amazing job, and he had the difficult one because I only had my role there, my part there. I had to make Two Face and Joker, and these are the poses we're going for, shooting for, and these are the positions in the 3D file that you have to work with. And yeah, okay. So
And they're not
every
full body either, right?
now I did the full body,
Oh, you did the full body?
both of them. Yeah,
Because it's
because
not full body on the statue, though.
yeah, but we didn't know exactly how we would. The same thing that happened with the octopus. He has a face behind the glasses, but some of the process were done after they had all the models.
Oh, I see.
So they have to check, hey, it's better to put them together this, like this, and this is the way we're going to go for the dream and the clouds. And so they ended up cutting. But if I decided or did something like, hey, I'll cut from his knee down, and they needed something below it, would we have to rework that, and we lose time,
Yeah.
because
So
there
it's
are
it's easier
sections
to take it away later than to add it, right?
that,
So you
so
mentioned the dream version. There's two versions of the statue. You got the colored and the smoke or dream version.
yeah,
If
I
you had
think
to pick, if you had to pick one of these two, which one would you pick for yourself?
well, it's a really hard choice because everything looks so great, but the last update that they showed about the dream version, the paint application update. It looked awesome, so I think I would go for the Dream one.
Yeah, I think they
Not the
made it a
Then,
little more,
yeah.
added a little more gray to it. It's a little darker than what I
Well,
just
yeah.
showed.
Chris and Charles, you guys both saw them in person. So what would you guys choose?
Hmm.
I liked the color one. I,
Okay.
I really liked that one. Both are very nice, but I mean maybe it'd be different with the paint update if we see that one ever get a chance to see it. But my vote's color.
I like the color one too, and I'll explain why. I really like the colors. I really like that they don't kind of fuse into one another, as if it's like one big glob. I really enjoyed the colored Sanity, but to be fair, the Nightmare version, the outlines, it didn't seem like it was finished yet. It looked like they were still working on it a bit to make sure what the final was gonna look like. Whereas the colored looked like they were all done.
Yeah, true. And I think it was the case because they have rushed it for the con, and there is an update on XM Facebook page. I think some
Yeah,
images of it, and it looks really really great.
yeah.
Oh,
It's
they
been
sold out, right?
yeah,
They
it's
sold
sold
out
out in
pretty
a
quick.
day, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Gina, which one would you pick, color or smoke, if you had to choose?
I've always had a preference for the dream sequence one. I mean, I
Hmm.
hadn't seen it in person, but I like the sort of simplicity of it. And I mean, though I haven't seen it in person, but if I had to choose, I think I'd choose that one.
Well, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. They both look
Right.
really good. Um, okay, so XM Studios, you've done lots of work for them. Most of the stuff is coming out next year, so I'm definitely excited for Doctor Octopus. We'll move on to our last segment of the show here, just kind of a free for all. We have some random questions for you about the industry and stuff. So I think Charles, you had one for Victor.
I actually have three questions, but I'll start on a simple one. You were mentioning earlier, you used to work on toys. You mean action figures?
No, I always wanted to work on toys and action figures. I did one work with pop culture, but I think it was canceled because
What
something about the line.
was it? Street Fighter?
Oh, the Ken,
No,
the little Ken.
uh, no,
Oh,
action figures I did was the Werewolf in London.
oh,
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 oh, that one came out of nowhere. Wouldn't have guessed that one.
Werewolf in London is the first film, right? London or is it Paris? Werewolf in Paris.
London's the
uh,
first one.
London's the first one, the classic one. So yeah, that's the other one. I did the Meatloaf Jack for them. the one that is already thrashed by the werewolf, and it was a really nice. I had the opportunity to meet Jerry at Pop Culture Red headquarters at the time, and he showed me the prototype, and it was so cool. It was it was my first action figure, but it was canceled. I don't think it
It
will
doesn't
be.
ring a bell to me,
Oh,
so yeah, it probably
sorry to
didn't
hear
come out.
that.
Okay, I got a question for you. You mentioned you've worked on video games in the past.
Mhm.
Are you a gamer yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't had the opportunity to work on big titles. I worked more for internet games and everything related to small consoles. Uh, but yeah, I'm a gamer. I don't play more because I don't have much left time left, you know.
Yeah.
But I've been following Blizzard, for example, since from the beginning. I played Blackthorn and Rock and Roll Racing and all this kind of stuff and
Rock and
other
Roll
games.
Racing on Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still have it. I still have
That
it.
was awesome. But I always ask this
And
question because Gina's has a PlayStation 4, but she refuses to play
A
it.
I have a
Um,
self-imposed ban on playing video games because
so I always
I would
ask,
never never
yeah,
leave the TV.
I always ask
yeah,
gamers like yourself, if you had to pick one game for Gina to get back into gaming with, which one would you pick?
okay. She wants a hard one and it's a really fun one, I would pick Star Wars Empire Strikes Back from Super Nintendo.
Oh,
Oh, old school, old
Or
school.
if
Yeah.
you want a more easier an easier one, if you want a funnier one, I would also go with Super Nintendo with Turtles in Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in
Oh,
Time.
that's a great game. That's a great game.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I play with my kid.
Yeah. And that's hard though. You mentioned that those old school games, like they're not easy. With
Yeah,
no
they're not.
saves and man, kids these days don't know what a hard game is actually like.
Exactly. It's like Empire Strikes Back was like, oh my god, I want to kill myself.
Almost, yeah.
so I had a question. So you mentioned early on in our show here that you sort of grew up with comic books, pulp culture, and now that you're sort of immersed in this. Have you ever gotten a chance to meet any of your idols, any of your idols in terms of comic book creators or?
Oh, I'm kind of shy with that. I haven't, and I don't know how it works. But for example, I was in San Diego Comic Con back in 2015, and I was walking down the hall, and then I was like 1 meter away from Jim Lee,
Wow.
and I was like, oh my God, it's Jim Lee. I don't know what to do. Okay, but I'm close to him, snuff.
He's
And
very
then
nice, actually.
yeah, and I was like, it was one of the great moments, and I was lucky enough to know Ivan Reis while I worked back in Ireland, and also in the same San Diego Comic Con, it was like 10 a.m. I can't remember exactly the time, but it was kind of empty, and then I was walking, and I turned on a corner, and I said, "Oh, that's awesome! Mike Mignola, Hellboy here to buy." And then when I look up, Mike Mignola was there,
Oh wow.
Oh, cool.
and I was, "Oh my God, I have to buy something and ask him for sign it." But it was a bit expensive, and I couldn't buy anything. And
Mike
uh,
Minola, Pickup, Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange, Triumph, and Torment. Thank me later. You will love it.
okay,
It's his best
I'll
work.
pick it up. I'll pick it up for sure.
Mm.
And it was awesome. So yeah, I didn't have this opportunity yet. Maybe someday, I don't know. It would be great to
Mm.
know this kind of people that made me what I am right now. For example, I played a lot of RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and all these GURPS and all these dated RPGs. So it would be great to meet like the headquarters of Wizards of the Coast someday. I don't know if they
No.
even exist.
Well, they do. They're not far from you. I believe they're in Seattle.
Oh
I
yeah?
think. I think
Oh,
so.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Not
So
too
you
far.
could probably take a day trip down to meet all those guys. I bet.
And by the way, I had the opportunity of 1 month ago to make something that I wouldn't believe. Also, I worked with Dungeons and Dragons line with Iron Studios. I made Bobby and Hawk, and but Hawk, no, what is his name? Yeah, it's Hawk. No, the
The
Archer one.
animated series. Yeah.
Yeah, the Archer one is Hawk, and I didn't hit him. But I also had the opportunity to work on the Beholder dice the cup, for a company, and it was great because they will release it soon. And
Mm,
I working on Beholder, yeah.
great stuff. I have another question for you. It's kind of related to Gina's question, but it's something that I like to ask artists whenever I have a chance. Um, this is a very small community, and so you're aware of one another, who's doing what, and are there artists that you reach out for advice? Hey, I'm working on this. What do you think of this? What do you think I can do with that? Your art director aside, uh, are there people you reach out? And also, on the same token, are there sculptors that you think are among the best? Are there sculptors that you are really impressed with? If you could mention,
Well,
who do you think are the best?
there are great friends that whenever I can, I ask for their opinion. We are we are like as you said, a small community. So when we have difficulties, and it's always good to have an outside opinion because we don't know how to solve or do everything. So, hey, dude, it's always great to talk to our friends. Yeah, I have a lot of friends that I can ask them. I don't know, Igor, Caio Cesar. I have Daniel Bell, and uh, every time that I have the opportunity, and I talk to them and ask for opinion and all everything that I need help. And yes, I think Daniel Bell is a great sculptor and a great artist. I also love Dave Diego and Martin Canali. I also love Martin Augusta as an artist.
He just released the with XM the Dark Phoenix, which is an absolute beauty.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's awesome, and he has a hand for female characters that is awesome. I love it. And all these people, they are like big reference for me because they all have their styles, and I can't pick which one I like the most. Have like Rafael Grassetti does his stuff too with Sideshow, and Igor always uh, work with Sideshow too and Iron Studios. So there is another guy called Abraão Araújo, and he has done some stuff with Prime One, and they are all great artists, and I am lucky to have them as friends. So
And vice versa. I imagine that they reach out to you as well for opinions.
yeah, whenever they can, they because it's hard to it's we have the NDA. We can't show it's not the ethical stuff because sometimes I'm working for some companies and they are working for another company. So there is this conflict that we have to be very professional in showing stuff. Maybe some sometimes we are all friends, but sometimes hey, I have a doubt about this arm. We crop the arm and show only the arm to know am I doing that because people and companies trust on us to make the best for them. So we have to be very professional. If you are a full-time worker on a company, you have to be very professional. And if you are a freelancer for a lot of companies, you have to have more professional because uh, you get a lot of information and you can't mix things up,
Yeah.
uh, because
I think
uh,
people are going to know, right? If you're showing an arm and it's
yeah,
like a purple suit and white gloves and a white
Yeah.
skin, who could that be?
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's
But there is also the surprise effect, and we don't want to ruin that, you know. But we in the industry, we are always and we're all aware of that. So we know how to ask things and show stuff, and we're very careful with that, especially because internet is like a very dangerous place. So sometimes just to put something on Facebook chat or it's a breach of
Yeah, I
security.
get. I,
So we don't do that very often.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because we've had quite a few artists on the show, and they've never mentioned that, and that once you reach that level of working on these licensed projects, there's a level of professionalism and what you can say, what you can do. You're working on projects that are thousands and thousands of dollars in the making, and there's a lot riding on these statues. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. And sometimes that level of like professionalism, you can see the difference in maybe someone that's not worked on any licensed projects before. You can see that difference on, you know what I mean, in terms of how they interact with, you know, other people and other collectors and um, or whatever. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. That once you're working on these huge projects, um, there's a lot writing on it, and terms of what's at stake, and how you're expected to not share information or share information, blah blah blah. So
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of hard because we are all friends, especially with the owners and everything. So it's really hard because I have not been in this position, but I would think it would be very hard. For example, get two characters from the different companies with the same scale. If you get different scales, it's easy, and you have different details and different concepts. But if you get characters from the same scale from different companies, you have to be aware because they have their team working on it and the other company has their team working on it, and you are in the middle and you have to be professional and say, okay, this is the best for this project, and the other one, this is the best for this project, because you are in the middle and you want to burn yourself,
mm,
and you want to burn that bridge with the company, so
makes perfect sense. I know over the years that even us as fans, we become friends with some of the artists. Right, it's going to happen, especially when you're exposed to them and you talk with them so often. And on occasion, when we are shown some prelim stuff, it always comes with the caveat: before I show you anything, do not post this anywhere. Do not show this to anyone. Uh, so we get that. We get what you're saying. It makes
mhm.
complete sense.
one thing you mentioned there that I always kind of wonder about, and maybe I don't know if you would know about it, but it seems like you get companies working on the same character at the same time frequently. Sideshow and XM both just did a Mystique, and they both just did a Wolverine. Like, do the companies, do the licensors, like, does Marvel go and say, okay, we want Wolverine, everyone do a Wolverine, or is
Maybe
this
more
just,
uh,
specific. Work on these 10. You got
yeah,
these 10 that you could work on. And
Yeah, I had a pretty small contact with this kind of thing, how they, but it may be sometimes it's not that they are being worked or asked to do at the same time. Sometimes you have done a character like 2 years before the other company, but there is the releasing, the process, the production time, and then you have other characters in front of it, and then it matches to be in the same time. It's really coincidence. Uh, Sometimes, yeah, maybe I don't know if it's possible, but sometimes I think it's possible that Marvel and DC for to ask for some characters maybe because of the movies,
yeah,
or that would
like,
be a smart move. Like they do that for comics. They try to relate the comic characters more to the movie characters today, and the design and everything. So yeah, they did. I think they might be able to do that and ask for that. But uh, the few times that I've seen that before, it was really kind of coincidence
Yeah.
because
It's like
there were
Lobo's
different
another
times.
character. Like everyone's got a Lobo right now.
Yeah.
Like is that just fluke? I've always kind of wondered how does that happen so often? Same character, but anyways, anyone have any last questions for Victor before we?
I just have one last one.
Sure.
So what should we expect or to see from you in the future? What's in the pipeline? Are you working on Marvel, DC, some professional creator owned personal stuff?
I'm
Uh,
working. Yeah, I'm working on Marvel, DC. I'm
Anything
working.
specific you can tell us?
No.
See that? That's all you
We
needed
just
to
finished
say.
the NDA. We just finished this segment on
You
NDAs.
know,
Yeah,
I'm
it's been so
working.
long. Maybe he's forgot that he brought it up.
yeah.
Uh, I'm working on Kamen Rider for a license company that just got their license. Yeah, I'm thinking about working on my own IPs.
Oh wow.
I'm thinking about a lot of stuff about the future. I don't know. I'm thinking, um,
Well, when it comes
yeah,
to that, the creator owned stuff, come back, see us again. We'll gladly talk about it.
I would
And
love to. Thank you so
let
much.
us our pleasure, and let us know about the future stuff that you're working on and some of the companies that we talked about here. Or is there some steering towards sideshow at some point?
I don't know. Would be awesome because Sideshow is the main reference for the market as their history has 20 years of history in collectibles. So it would be awesome to work with them for sure. Uh, right now, I don't. I talked to some of the guys there, the Daniel Bell, David Eagle, but I haven't had the opportunity to work with them. And would be it's always great to work with different companies and new companies and make new friends. So
Absolutely.
as a freelancer and a professional and a sculptor, it would be awesome to work with all those companies. For example, Bowen. After I knew Bowen, all the status and designs and what they have done, I always think myself like, hey, it would be awesome to have worked with that company because they have some awesome classic look stuff. And
Absolutely. There's no company that presented more diversified product than Bowen Designs. I can't see it ever being replicated by any other company.
No.
They
oh yeah,
literally did
They
hundreds of different
yeah,
characters,
yeah
hundreds.
they touched them all almost them all.
yeah.
Gina,
So
anything last for
I'd
Victor?
love to work with them all.
Uh,
Well,
I just wanted to say no. Thank you, Victor, for your time and spending your time with us
very much.
and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you so much for the invite, guys. It was awesome. I've been seeing the show many times and seeing Martin when Martin was here, and it's like very rewarding to get an invite from you. You know.
Well, you're
Uh,
welcome on the show anytime. And once again, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed the show, and we'll
thank
talk
you.
to you guys
See you next time.
shortly. All
See
right.
you guys.
All right.